By the end of 1994, with much of Sierra Leone in chaos, the government hired a South African mercenary army called Executive Outcomes to restore order. The soldiers for hire were promised diamonds as pay.
Executive Outcomes had an effective air power, which they used to their advantage in the diamond area. They had one big aim to clear those areas of rebels because their whole pay depended on that.
In just 1 month, Executive Outcomes drove the RUF out of most of the diamond-rich East. The resulting peace brought elections in 1996, but the RUF refused to participate. Former United Nations official Ahmad Tijan Kabar was elected president.
Ahmad Tijan Kabar campaigned in a very simple way. They would help end the war and return this country to normalcy.
Enough is enough. We should really try and stop the decline of our country.
But at the urging of the UN, Kabar terminated the contract of Executive Outcomes. With no military force to stop them, the RUF rose up again.
The RUF said that it was fighting against military rule and they were for democracy and they wanted peace and development. But when the military government left power and there was an elected government, they kept on fighting.
And to punish those who voted for President Kabar, the RUF exacted horrific revenge on the people of Sierra Leone.
They called us
Tijan Kabar supporters. They said, today would be the last day you meddle in politics. They ordered me to stretch my hand. I pleaded with them in the name of God. I told them right now, I have my children, my husband is unemployed, and I am the head of my family. They mocked me saying, stretch your hand and touch God.
Move your hand from the war. Take off your hands out of the war. That was the meaning of that chopping of hands.
Kumba Mbindi fled her village with her husband and young son when it was attacked by rebels.
We left there and moved to Tumbudu. When we got there, they were still chasing us, so we stayed in the woods. At that time, I was 4 months pregnant.
But the RUF caught up with them. Kumba's husband was dragged into the jungle, and 3 rebels accosted her.
I pleaded with him, but he started undressing me. I was stripped and I fell. I continued to plead that I was pregnant, but he responded by saying that wasn't his doing. He went into the farmhouse, came out with a stick. I started bleeding. He was going to split my stomach open and remove my baby.
Then Kumba's husband emerged from the jungle.
Blood was spraying from his wrist area. He yelled. They cut my hands off. So I kept thinking, they cut my husband's hands off, they mutilated me. I asked him why they cut his hands off. He said they told him they did it because he voted for Tijan Kabar, that it was lesson, so they wouldn't do that anymore.
In 1996, the war entered its 6th year. Illicit diamonds had helped sustain a conflict that might otherwise have ended quickly.
The amount of money that the RUF made from the diamonds in Sierra Leone is between $50 to $125 million per annum during the time period that they had control over the diamond fields.
The RUF were about to get more rich pickings. The army overthrew the president and invited the rebels into Freetown as allies. Almost immediately, the RUF set about pillaging the capital. in what they cynically called Operation Pay Yourself.
We went house to house looting. We took belongings, demanded money, and sometimes killed 2 or 3 of their family members.
It was a war of stealing, grabbing, and taking illegally what you never worked for.
People were being forced into their houses. This was the time I had to go into hiding. You hear people being shot at. You hear people crying, rebels attacking them, women being brutalized. They were being raped in front of their children, in front of their husbands, in front of their family members.
Freetown was hell, to put it very crudely. There was complete anarchy and instability in this country.
The horror ended only when a Nigerian-led intervention force drove the RUF out of the capital. But by then, 6,000 people had perished. Corpses piled up outside Freetown's hospitals.
The dead bodies that I saw, perhaps up to the day I die, I pray not to see that many dead people.
And a once vibrant city was in ruins. Finally, the international community intervened. The warring parties met in Lomé, Togo in July 1999 and signed a peace accord.
It called for complete cessation of hostilities from all parties. It also granted amnesty to all the fighting forces, including the RUF. It also called for some power sharing.
The Lomé Peace Accord was probably one of the worst things that have been done in Africa in many, many, many years.
To the horror of many in Sierra Leone, Foday Sanko, leader of the RUF, was handed the vice presidency.
People said there will never be a military solution to this, there has to be a political solution. The political solution was to give the vice presidency of the country to a butcher.
As vice president, Sanko was granted official oversight of Sierra Leone's diamond mines. The very objective he had sought through 8 years of war. Halfway across the world, a Canadian pressure group called Partnership Africa-Canada was working on peace-building projects for Sierra Leone.
And one of the Sierra Leoneans in the group said, this thing is really about diamonds. Until somebody does something about diamonds, this thing will never be over. We began to research the subject, and sure enough, diamonds really were the heart of the matter.
In January 2000, Partnership Africa-Canada published a scathing report that exposed how diamonds funded the RUF's brutal war. The report also pointed the finger at De Beers. Although they'd closed their Sierra Leone office in 1985, the report claimed that De Beers were almost certainly purchasing Sierra Leone blood diamonds unwittingly, after they'd been smuggled out of the country.
If you can't buy them in the country where they're mined, then you buy them somewhere else. In the end, they're all going to go into the same pot. So certainly they were buying diamonds that had been smuggled from a whole variety of places.
De Beers itself did not buy any Sierra Leone diamonds from 1985 onwards, but clearly there were problems in terms of those diamonds from that country getting into certain channels, being smuggled and getting onto the international markets.
Most diamonds were smuggled out through neighboring country, Liberia.
In a 2-year period, over $2 billion worth of diamonds had come into Antwerp, supposedly from Liberia.
Yet none of these diamonds came from Liberia. Liberia itself has very few diamonds. This is a country that can't produce $10 million worth of diamonds a year.
The report also showed that invoices were often falsified by listing a diamond shipment's last country of transport and not its country of origin.
Many diamonds went through Swiss free ports, and so these were declared as Swiss diamonds. Switzerland, of course, doesn't have any diamonds.
As negative press about blood diamonds spread, the industry took notice. De Beers was the first to act.
De Beers began to recognize that this was a real issue, and as the industry leader, they would have to make some changes in the way they do business.
They realized that they actually had to do something for whatever reasons, whether it was altruistic or whether it was to protect the good name of diamonds. They did become involved.
In 2000, De Beers stopped buying diamonds on the open market, ending a practice that had been central to their business since the beginning.
And basically said they would only buy diamonds from mines that they controlled or had a share in, so they knew exactly where the diamonds came from.
When we look at the absolute tragedy that was going on in Sierra Leone, this shocked the world and it shocked the diamond industry. And we very quickly wanted to become part of the solution in putting an end to this. Diamonds should have nothing to do with these kind of activities.
For an industry that had altered very little in over a century, it was a dramatic change.
The awareness of conflict diamonds is probably the biggest change to the diamond industry, almost from the beginning.
But just as the diamond industry finally took action, in Sierra Leone, the RUF rose again. The RUF rebels had broken the ceasefire and were on the rise once again. But this time, the world was determined to defeat them once and for all. In May 2000, a British intervention force landed on the shores of Sierra Leone. Together with UN troops, they crushed the RUF and arrested their leader, Fode Sanko.